Hey there, Natural You listeners. This is your host, Tim Wood. Today I'm with the lovely Claire Amos. Claire and I have been in practice roughly the same amount of time. And so we've been navigating the same landscapes together. And not too long ago, I saw a little advert for one of the retreats she ran. I thought, hang on, that's kind of like the stuff I do or want to do. So we have a lot in common. And I really asked Claire to come on because I think she has a really interesting journey in healthcare and where she started and where she's got to now with little meanderings along the way. So welcome, Claire.
So much, Tim, and thank you for inviting me to talk today and sharing my story, which I really feel I have a great story now to share with people. And yeah, I'd like to show it.
Well, so tell us where it started and how your interest in healthcare began, and then kind of lead us along your path so far.
Okay, so after school, I wanted to do something in the caring profession, so I took on a nurse training up in London. So then I think I started the training the year after was when they were going to start the degree in the Project 2000. That was this idea that came over from America, so making it more degree based. But the training that I had was a very hands-on, in a hospital hierarchy. Like when you start as a student nurse first year, you're just at the lowest of the low, basically. And I think I've actually kept my first pay slip. I got £50 for a week's work. So yeah, but I did. It was an amazing training. I just loved my nurse training. I got so much from it. But I was very, I struggled with the drugs and the medicines that people were being given at times. The hierarchy I really struggled with. It was just really ingrained in the NHS, and I expect it, and what I've heard, I think it still is very much so. And the nutrition was just I had a really interest in food, and I like to grow food, and I couldn't understand how the food that we were giving these patients was meant to be healing. So lots of questions there. But I did qualify, and I continued to practice as a registered general nurse. I specialised in elderly care. Again, I loved what I did, but it was just so harrowing being in charge of a ward when you were basically you had so much to prioritise. I mean, the prioritising was ridiculous. I was meant to be the patient's advocate, but you had one in charge, and you had like 3 or 4 people auxiliaries helping you, and you had to prioritise somebody coming in with a myocardial infarction needing a medication within 8 hours, somebody who needed changing the bed because they'd soiled it, someone needed feeding, someone needed turning for pressure sore, someone just died and you had to talk to the relatives or load the patient out. I mean, how do you prioritize with all that? It was just crazy. And because it was elderly care, they gave us the same amount of staff than a medical ward that had people up to 70. It was 70 years plus on our ward. So people who are older need a lot more care. And, management wouldn't listen. I reported the manager to the director of the hospital. So obviously I was not a yes person. I wasn't going to get on in a nursing career. So I had to kind of go, okay, really rethink, because I was going home a lot crying and really frustrated with my day, and not able to be doing my value, following my values. And then I remembered when I was about 14, I used to see a chiropractor, a McTimoney chiropractor that my mum knew. And then I had a little bit of an idea. I wanted to be an equine chiropractor. And I saw McTimoney College, did equine. So I thought, right. So I ditched my NHS job and then enrolled as a chiropractor, trained to be a chiropractor at McTimoney College, which was within a little room in Oxford then when I started. And I was really lucky to get this beautiful little job as a night sister in an independent hospital, so no stress there, and I could arrange all my rotas around my training. It would just all worked out beautifully.
Oh, that's great. So you were able to keep your nursing, kept you going, and was your job, and you're still able to be in caring, but in a less stressful environment. Then was McTimoney, was it part-time?
Yes,
or was
it was
just
part-time. It was part-time, yeah. And then I worked like 3 or 4 nights a week, because when you're doing night duty, then you squash more hours in. I mean, I don't know actually how I did it, because it was just full on life. I didn't have any kids then, but I had a horse. So yeah, life was very, very busy. But obviously I managed it because I qualified in 1997, and I was pregnant with my first son, Charlie, then as well. And then Wilsey came along 16 months later. So I wanted to devote myself to being a mum. So I didn't follow my registration on after qualifying. And then I just started to work very part-time as a chiropractor. I did run a complementary health centre with another chiropractor about 7 years. And that's when my kind of real love of other therapies came in. So I learned a lot and that's when yoga is a massive part of my life. And in the clinic, we'd have Pilates, yoga going on, acupuncture, hypnotherapy. And I'd learn a lot from these other therapists, dip in and I'd experience it as well. So that was, it was really wonderful time. And then I kept encouraging my patients to go and do yoga because I thought it's a really good exercise for your back. And a few of them said, I'm not going to do it until you go and train. So that kind of not pushed me, but thankfully actually, because it really helped with a lot of mental health issues I was going through. As we all do, go through something in our lives, very challenging. So that really helped.
So how does yoga, I mean, I've heard people say this before, how does yoga impact your mental health? I mean, how can standing and balancing and doing various stretches and postures change your mental or emotional state?
And stand on your head too. It's a wonderful way of calming our nervous system, mobilizing our spine in a very gentle way. And just getting that, as we know, we have many senses in our body. We've got these external senses, but what we don't talk about enough is the internal senses, interoception, your vestibular sensing and proprioception. And yoga is just such an amazing tool. Even though I didn't know those words when I started my training, I kind of immersed myself in that inner landscape. And that's when, if you can get into that inner landscape, you can really calm your nervous system and you can trap into the true you, your nature. And that's what another part of my life is, nature. I have to be near nature and work and grow, have my hands in the soil. I was gardening today, taking the brambles down. I got cut on the face a bit, but there's lots of different aspects to gardening. But and it's just such a wonderful thing to do, to be out in nature.
Yeah, I mean, we know how calming that is, and I find people who have their hands in the soil are much more in touch with themselves, and you can often tell people who farmers or gardeners, they have a certain, and it's literally a groundedness because they've had their hands and their knees and their toes in the ground,
and you can see it in their fingernails as well.
Yeah,
definitely
exactly.
Scrubbing my fingernails.
My mom was a gardener and horticulturalist and landscape designer, and in a latter years she had to get a new passport to come and visit us in the UK, and her fingertips they couldn't have to take fingerprints.
She'd worn them away.
They couldn't take them because they were totally worn away. They're like she had to be in there in hours trying to get a accurate representation. So I always laugh when I think about her trying to do her smudges with no fingerprints from all her time in the soil. She had become one with the soil.
Well,
so you did your yoga, and I see from the other things you've done, it always seems like there's a very physical element to the kind of, so like you didn't go and do hypnotherapy or counseling.
No.
There's always seems to be like a physical element to that. Are you a very tactile person? Or
I love, touch is very. When I was nursing, I used to do a lot of pain relief. I used to massage people's feet on the walls as a student nurse and get told off, because I wasn't, I don't know, doing something else that was more important apparently. But yeah, I love to massage and touch. It was such an important part of my life. Absolutely. And being in my body, I dance a lot, 5 rhythms dancing and things like that dance. So I like to move my body and be really in touch. And the more I learn about our bodies, it's so important. As I'm an older woman now, I'm post-menopause, so I've really got to start looking after my physical body because I'm lacking quite a few hormones now, and there's a vulnerability within me, and I'm determined that I'm going to keep on going into my 90s and still be practicing as a chiropractor because I love what I do so much. I really do. And now the boys have left home, you know, I've got more time to train and learn, and I'm more obsessed with it all, to be honest, really.
So you're still learning, you're still adding different modalities, and I saw on your bio you've added craniosacral work. And tell me how that kind of ties in with particularly the chiropractic and the form that you practice in the McTimoney chiropractic, and how you see those tying in together. And are they that different from other types of chiropractic that might be more manual adjustments or more physical elements to them? How do you see those connecting?
It's a bit like the yin and yang, I suppose, or a bit like kung fu and tai chi or qigong. That I've learned in biodynamic craniosacral therapy. So it's very much a stillness. It's about you being in that interoceptive meditation state, then allows you to then communicate, because our bodies are communicating on stuff that we can't conceptually word, but you can feel it inside you. And I know you're smiling there because you know you experience practitioner and you get that. And the biodynamic craniosacral therapy is such a beautiful way of just getting that person in ease. And then when I can, and also the other thing I really find it's good at working with is seeing where traumas are, where there's a physical block or trauma. It could be emotional or physical or chemical, holding in the body, in the tissues, and you just hold it and then just allow the story to unravel. And they might want to talk about it, or maybe sometimes I can actually see a trauma almost happening in my head, and just like communicating with that person. And then you can release that, and then you can get to the subluxations in the spine, and then just adjust, and then you've kind of worked with those both elements. And I just love it. It's almost, it's like, it's art. It is an art, but it was like me painting a picture. I'm so satisfied at the end of it sometimes, and you think, wow, feel that change. It's very exciting. And the more experience I'm getting, the more excited I'm getting about the work as well.
That's beautiful. It's beautiful. So how do you, because obviously, you know, if you're going to be holding someone, you need to be in a certain state, because you're communicating with as much as they're communicating, their body's communicating to you, your body's communicating with them. So how do you put yourself into ease before you start your practice, or before you put your hands on a client or a patient? How do you prepare? Because I know a lot of health practitioners are listening to this, and they might like, sometimes I can get into practice, I'm a little bit edgy. I'm going, okay, I need to do something to shift my state, right? What do you do?
So I'm quite disciplined in the morning. I get up. I sometimes join a few girls. We miracle mornings, we call it, at 6 o'clock. So we get going at 6, and for 45 minutes for gratitudes, intentions and goals for the day, or whatever you're aiming for. And then we listen to a really good speaker. And then, so 45 minutes at the beginning of the morning, and then I go for a walk in nature, and then I do yoga or Pilates practice, and then I'm ready for work. And some breath work. I do my breath work every day. That's very important. I haven't got young kids anymore. My boys are 26 and 27, so I've got that freedom in the morning.
I'm definitely slacking. Looking at your preparedness. So
that's my morning routine. And if I don't do that, I get agitated. You know, so
so you're used to that state now. Anything outside of that is not okay for your nervous system.
No, and now because the fasting, every year I do a 5-day fast, 4 or 5 day fast twice a year, and that's another thing that I promised myself about 6 years ago I would do for the rest of my life, twice a year. I'll probably do more when I've got a bit more time and I've got a bit more kind of, yes, let's fast, because it's always a bit of a struggle for me as well.
So often those sort of bigger things, it's the decision and they're kind of like knuckling down and doing it. Once you're in it, it's okay. It's kind of just getting to that point of like, okay, making the space, making the time, and then going for it. You know, and once you're in it, you're in it. But it's getting your head around it, and so often preparing for an event or something we want to do, and holding ourselves to account to do that 2 fasts a year or whatever it is.
And I think certainly when I went through a lot of stress in my life in my 40s, when I'd get really upset or angry or frustrated, because I was very trapped in a situation for about 10 years, I just couldn't get out of it. I'd get on my bicycle and I'd cycle up a mile up a hill, and I'd feel those endorphins come in. And that really solidified in me, I can change the state of my mind. And I didn't want those 10 years, I did not want that giving me cancer, because I really think that those negative, if you allow that to gnaw at you, over that, when you've got a situation where you can't get out of, and I really couldn't, and yet you wanted to function still, everything moving forward, you have to do something with that, and I think once you've experienced that and you've felt the change, you know that you can do something, and it's important, so then ever since then it's like, right, this is really important for me.
Yeah, and so there you touched on things like exercise. So there's doing,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's fasting, which is not doing. And that's for me, which is quite interesting, because for me it's like, yeah, I'm also a doer.
Mm-hmm.
So for me to go and exercise most days, no problem. Go and do something. Go and do the sauna, do the ice bath, go for a run, cycle, play paddle, whatever it is, whatever my new interest is. Then, but then to not do and say, okay, right, I'm going to not eat, I'm going to
rest,
not go and do that thing it's a different kind of challenge, isn't it?
It is, but it's planned in my diary a year ahead, so I know exactly what dates I'm going to be doing it. And it's because I'm learning more and more about fasting. I've been involved, knowing about it for about 10 years now. The more I learn about it, the more it is the most amazing medicine in the world. It's the oldest cure in the world. It's the most amazing medicine in the world. And it's about resting your digestive system as well as your brain. And, some people talk about drinking coffee or working through a fast, but it's why don't I just give myself a total holiday, have nothing planned? I arrange massage or reflexology for myself every day, and I just do nothing, absolutely nothing. I get up and do a little bit of walk or not, and I often just lie down and sleep quite a lot, to be honest, and catch up.
Yeah, it's amazing. I like to do one where I go into nature, and it's usually solo, right? So I'm on my own, and it's so much easier. And I've done that a few times, and I love it. And then last year I decided the times didn't work out for me, and so I thought, well, I'm going to do it, but I'm going to do it at home and carry on working. And it was so hard, because so many of your routines and your benchmarks in the day are built around a meal. Like, we're going to have lunch, and then we're going to do this, and then and so you almost want to have that because of your routines. It's almost like they remind your body that you need to do this because this is the time to do it. And then when you take yourself out of your routines, it's actually easier, because you don't have those cues and those triggers. And then also, like, someone's cooking in the house, you smell that and you go, oh, I wouldn't mind a bit of that.
No.
Or so I think you're right. I think taking yourself out of your environment and scheduling it in a different way, and like you say, doing it, making it a kind of a holiday thing, and it's a holiday for parts of your brain, and while you're doing that, other parts of your body are ramping up and doing a detox and cleansing and
rejuvenating,
autophagy or autophagy, or whatever you say. They're cleaning out all those precancerous cells and all those things. And I
like the word. I've created a word, autophagizing. I really like that word. That's what I use. Are you autophagizing today?
Autophagizing. Yeah. So it's those things are healthy, and they were built into our genome. Expects that. We as hunter gatherers, it would be lean times, and that would be almost expected.
Absolutely.
And the way that we store fat and prepare for those lean times have now created problems for us elsewhere in our physiology, and a lot of dysfunction and disease comes from not having that break.
Absolutely.
So it's super important.
Totally.
And I know from I looked at your pamphlet for your retreats, and fasting is a big part of that. Have you tried any? So it's water fast. Have you ever done? I'm curious. Ever done a non-water fast? Because I know that's a thing too.
What you say? So water only fasting is what I do now.
Dry fast.
Yeah, there's a doctor called Dr. Flivanov in Russia who talks about a 6 day. He can go up to 6 days, but that's all. I haven't been tempted yet, but he swears by it. I would have to try it before I'd encourage anyone to do it. So maybe over the next few years, as more information comes out about it. Yeah, I'm a little bit nervous about it because it's amazing when you fast. I mean, I could talk about this for hours, but each fast that you do is different. And it's different for everybody as well. So like one year I had the most horrific I had what would have been diagnosed as cystitis, but I then actually thought, well, look, this is just, I'm having the symptoms of cystitis. Cystitis is just a label, isn't it? But actually my body is getting rid of so much disgusting stuff, because each year I presume there's something else that comes up, and I'm sure there's emotional context with it as well. That most people would have broken the fast and freaked out and thought they need to take antibiotics or whatever, but I just went through it, and it was painful, it was horrible, but I got through it, and I'm sure my systems are so much better for it for having gone through that. You can't measure most of the stuff that you release when you're fasting.
Yeah, and one of the things that I like the most about fasting is the mental state, and I particularly in the latter phases, how like your whole body and nervous system just kind of calm down, and it gets this very even state. And even if I've done exercise when I'm fasted, I feel like I can go at a lower level, but I can just go forever, and I just feel like I'm just super. My fuel source is just super even, and I kind of, and when I go into nature, then it really feels different.
Absolutely.
And I then realize why most religious or spiritual traditions have fasting elements built into them, because I really think it's a way that has an important aspect on our mental and spiritual connection by not being materialized. By taking in material, we're less material, and so our bodies are not focusing on material; they're focusing on running off energy, right? It's not focusing on putting in new stuff.
Well, the body appreciates running on ketones. That's the big issue. We're so addicted. Basically, I've stopped sugar for the last 10 days, and it's taken a few days to not kind of crave it. It's a very addictive thing, isn't it? But it's interesting about the religious aspect, because I originally thought, religions, that's why they brought it in. But there's a book I'm listening to at the moment called The Oldest Cure by Steve Hendricks, and he goes on for ages talking about how religion used it as an actual kind of like to keep everybody under their, in control. So it had elements of not always being a positive thing in the religious aspect, and just to share that.
Right.
It's been very
I
interesting.
haven't heard that, so that's interesting.
Yeah, and so they used it to control people big time. And then it was a guy, Henry Tanner, that started off really like modern fasting. And he was actually born in Tunbridge Wells, where I come from, believe it or not. But he ended up in America. In 1870, he did this massive fast, 42 days, I think he did. And there was the media from all around the world had their eyes on him. And apparently, I want to see if I can go and visit, but in New York, it's called Tanner's Well. He did the fast there, so he was very famous at one point. But each time, though, in history, like Galen was very much into his fasting. From reading the book, because this guy he's not a doctor, but he's really researched it. It just seems like nobody really takes the gauntlet until now, and it's almost like in the last. Dr. Goldhammer, True North Clinic in California. He's the longest water only fasting clinic that's been going since the 1990s. But now it's just literally people are starting to see its amazingness. But there is a lot of information out there, good and bad. So I think we have to know. Most of the research has been done on yeast and mice and Mickeys. So we don't really know. But at the end of the day, when I tell people, guests that come, it's like we're all individual on the outside as much as the inside. So we can't, just because that works for somebody else's physiology doesn't mean that it's going to be appropriate for you, because you're a story. Our fabric of our body is created through a story of our life, all the traumas and being overwhelmed and all the chemical stuff, and maybe taking a pill or your mother take it. It just goes on and on and on. So we've got to really accept that we are individual. And and if we're in touch with ourselves, we know what feels good. We know what kind of gives us energy rather than takes it away from us. And that's where the yoga is great.
Definitely, there's a lot of people have a fear around like, there's that word like I'm starving myself, or there's this, it feels like you're harming yourself by not eating, and it's just changing that mindset. And showing people that it is beneficial, and I'm a skinny guy, but like I can fast pretty easily without any.
Could do quite a few
the first time if I haven't eaten for a while, I get cold, particularly in my hands, and I'll go. And the first time I went away, I was like going out into the Welsh mountains on my own. I thought, and it was kind of autumn time, and I was like, I'm going to freeze. What I'm going to do if I get cold? And I didn't. I was really surprised because that was like a normal symptom for me to go, I need to eat something and my hands are getting cold. But I didn't experience that there. And so, I think everyone has enough reserves to go for a few days, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I hold maximum up to 5 days water only fasting. I'll probably eventually at some point do up to 10 days. But at the moment it works for me fine. And then it's a very safe length of time. I'm really happy to manage that. And what I love about it is that I'm going back to my nursing, but we're in nature in a biophilic environment, the positiveness of that, and using all these skills that I've learned. And TRE, that's become a very big part of my practice.
That was
I
wanted to come on that.
That's amazing. So, oh my God, that is amazing.
So I'd heard about this maybe 10 years ago. My sisters in South Africa were encouraged by their chiropractor. There was someone coming from overseas who was going to do this TRE, and they recommended that my mom had some trauma, and they recommended that she go, and my sisters went with her, and they had this, amazing experience, and there's the shaking phenomena, and they told me, and they said, Tim, we think it's your bag, you should go and do it. So I've always kept an eye on it. And then last year I looked at maybe doing a course, and I didn't feel right. So and then I saw you done it, and I was like, I want to hear all about it.
Oh my God!
So can you tell us? Can you just tell the listeners what it is, what it stands for, what the underlying theory is of TRE?
So TRE or TRE stands for trauma or tension release exercise. And it was created by Dr. David Baselli, and he was a psychologist who would go around. He was very religious then, and he'd go around and help people in war-torn communities. And he'd be in the shelters, and the bombs would be going off. And he noticed that the little ones, like under 5, were shaking and shaking when the bombs were going off, but the older ones were like sitting there still. So he kind of inquired about that, and they said, well, we don't want the little ones to see we're frightened. So that whole culture of holding it in, and look at us English. I mean, we're so like rigidness. We're not moving our hips and dancing and
stiff upper lip and all that.
Absolutely. And so we've had generations of that. And it's okay to shake your body out. It's okay to make a funny movement and not be judged by yourself and other people. And it's just, and what he did is what's so beautiful. He wanted to create something that you didn't have to pay expensive counsellors to go in and counsel people, but just give them a tool that they can do to help themselves. But you don't need to talk about it. Just let the body talk about it, because we know how the minds and bodies like we can't separate. They've tried to separate the consciousness in the brain, but it's not working. They've got to just change their approach. It's in our body, and that's what it allows to do, is to release that tension. And then the communities can teach you up, and it's cheap, and everyone can get. And when you do groups, because I do group once a month, it's so powerful. It really is, and it's so beautiful. And the feedback I've been getting has blown me away at times, actually. So do more of that. It's great.
And I first time I was exploring it, I was reading how, like, if you see an animal, if you see an antelope, an impala escaping runs away from the lion, and then it's got to a place of safety, and then it continues to shake.
Absolutely.
It's shaking and vibrating, and it's literally, that's the explanation I had was the adrenaline coursing through the body, and it needs to release that. And so it's kind of releasing all that, and the muscles are vibrating, getting rid of all that energy. And with us, we're exposed to lots of traumas, fight flight situations, and sometimes it might be, how often are we actually running or fighting? physically.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so where does that shaking go? Like you say, you can't be at your desk fucking shaking
No.
because you've had an argument with your boss
Yeah.
or had this mountain of work to do. And so that just gets stored.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
It,
and
it's
are there particular muscle groups that
mhm.
are more prone to storing this
Yeah,
than
well, he
others?
talks about the core muscle group. So if you go into that flexion, that kind of threat response, the psoas and those
That
kind of
kind of fetal position.
frontal position, and that's what you want to kind of in the legs. Yeah, absolutely. And it really is a resetting of the nervous system. So you're not carrying that story through, because layers and layers of stories, get interwoven and entwined in our fabric. And that causes holdings. And that's when I can feel in craniosacral therapy and that sort of work, you're feeling it as a holding, and the body's an experience that the body hasn't been able to reset or really released or be heard. Sometimes I think our bodies just need to be, okay, hello, that actually happened to me. Can you just acknowledge that and let me process it? Because we just get in the way in our heads all the time. So, well, most of the time, don't we? So it's giving the body permission to talk. And yeah, it's the future. We don't have to be talking about all this stuff. We can shake it and move it out.
We can shake it out.
Right.
We can process it. So I'm just curious about kind of more details. How long would a TRE session last?
So I do workshops for 2 hours, and that leaves plenty of time to talk about it, and then do the actual TRE, and then integration. Integration is so important because that's where the magic is. It's really where your nervous system settles down, and you can actually get that heightened of interoception. If you just do something and then, like if your yoga practice or whatever, you don't take that time to integrate, you're just on to the next thing, and you haven't got that memory, you haven't embodied it, and that's really, really important that you embody it.
So I mean, this is a topic I'm really, really interested in, is integration after any kind of releasing work. And so how do you facilitate that integration? What are things that typical go-tos that work for a lot of people in integration? Because what do you mean? I mean, integration, I have an idea of what it is, but what does that mean for you, and how do you express that or bring that to your group?
So not doing. So lying on the floor in Shavasana or in a really comfortable position, maybe it's a bolster or something under your knees, make you really relax, make sure you're warm. So you can just sink into yourself. You can just allow your mind to totally release, and then just sense that ease and that spaciousness, that we are all allowed. We kind of like, when we come into the world, we have a space that we're in, and because of traumas, because of overwhelmingness, our nervous system creates a contraction, and we kind of come away from that space. And unless you do these practices, people are just, as as therapists, some people you hold and their tone is so tight, bless them, because they haven't experienced that expansion within themselves. And that's what I think is integration, is to really get people to allow their bodies to relax and soften, and then soften.
So it's for you, it's a not doing.
Yes. But your
I
breathing,
found
your
just
awareness of your breath, you try not to go to
Yeah.
sleep if you can get people to not go to sleep, but that doesn't matter if they need
so
it.
And I suppose one of the appealing things is that people don't have to talk about it, because a lot of people find that really awkward. It's like, oh, am I going to have to sit in a circle and share my experience? That can be really, really hard for people. You have your own personal experience, and you don't need to share it with anyone, or what that represents or doesn't.
It's
so
gone.
it's really
It's gone.
it's gone.
Yeah, absolutely. But it might take. It's never. You can't just tick a box and it all goes, because there's always stuff to release. So it's a good practice to do.
Different layers, right?
Yeah. Well, I don't say layers anymore. It's fabrics.
Okay.
It's different fabrics, because the different fabrics have a different interweavedness of could be substance, textures. So it's not layers. And when you I've done quite a lot of work with embryology. Jacques van der Waal, if anybody's heard of him, he's just amazing. And there's no layers in the body. The mesoderm, the endoderm, ectoderm, they're not layers. They're just a different type of fabric, and then it behaves in a different way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, it's funny. I studied anatomy as well, and so those they always talk about them. Those are the 3 layers, right? ecto, meso, and endoderm, and I understand they're structurally different. And so that fabric is different, but I still see them as they have distinct characteristics, those fabrics or layers. I suppose the layers means it's super sequential, and maybe these are more interlinked. I don't know. Does that, because when you say fabrics, I'm going, okay, well, my 2D mind goes, oh, well, is it layers of wool and nylon and rayon and
But if you look at
cotton?
under,
Are they layered on top of each other, or are they all this or they have to be pulled apart? I don't have it clear in my mind.
have you ever looked at strolling under the skin? There's a little
No.
YouTube which goes, it's a fascia. It's looking at the fascia. It's the first kind of representation of the fascia. There's no, it's so chaotic. There's no layers in that. You might have an understanding of what I mean.
No, I get fascia and I get individual tissues, because they have their, tendon or ligament or fascial components. But I was kind of thinking, we also talk about emotional layers, right? And even the kind of conscious, unconscious, conscious, superconscious, we kind of that layering imagery.
Well, I suppose
within mental constructs.
I suppose I dissolve the layers a little bit now when I look at things. So I allow it to be more holistic rather than, because I think if you layer something, it separates it. I think that's probably what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. No, I think there's some mileage in that. I'm just trying to conceptualize it for myself. That's the first time I've heard of fabrics, but I haven't kind of worked how I can convey that to someone in a healing context. So that's something I'll explore. And so, Claire, so we've spoken about your nursing career. We've spoken about your chiropractic and McTimony, yoga, craniosacral, the TRE, the fasting, and now you've put that all together in nature, which is the other thing we've spoken about. And so you've kind of been able to pull all of this together and into a program. Can you tell us a little bit about your program, where it is, how long it takes, what the requirements are? Because I know some people who are listening to this and go, you know what, I think maybe my mind, body, and soul needs a holiday too.
Total reset, rest, and allowing you to recalibrate your mind, body, and spirit as well. I just see it as a soup of bringing everything together that I've been working with and believing and using. And each year, like this year, I've got some Tibetan bowls, so I'm going to be using more sounds with the retreat. So any kind of ideas that I come up with,
the Amos soup.
The healingness of soup. It's just like
the healing broth.
Absolutely,
Devon's healing broth.
Yeah, I just love it. It's just literally, this is a dream come true for me. I've had this vision for so long, and I just feel it's only just started as well. So it's exciting.
Okay, so tell us, give us where is it? Where do people stay? How does it all work?
So at the moment, we've got a field that we've created it on, and so it has to be kind of from May to September because it's too cold otherwise. Because you're basically based in, there's 4 yurts. They've all got names: Cutie Pie, Colin, Red Yurt, and Clover. And then I've got my beautiful T25 camper van called Bessie, who's got a lovely bed, and she's another accommodation. So I have 5 accommodations, and each person has their own individual accommodation. And then we've also got a very big 20-foot communal yurt where we do all stuff during the day, whether breath work or people just hang out in there or do some art, or do a bit of movement, or just sit and talk, or rest there too. And everyone is invited to have a sauna if they'd like every morning. We've got a sauna on the field, cold shower, hot shower, compost loo, and there's lots of lovely places to sit and meditate. We grow a lot of food, and it's really interesting. It's literally like this is like a canvas for us. We put our art and our passion for biodiversity there as well. And I've created this massive heart-shaped bed full of flowers and herbs, and so there's lots of bees to listen to. So and I just
Wonderful.
love creating more stuff there. It's fun. a lot of fun.
Sounds beautiful. So for everyone listening, I'm going to include in the show notes the details and the flyer. There are various 3-day and 5-day fasts in May through to September, and there'll be some email links and sign up information there. If you wanted more information, Claire's email was there, so you can get hold of her and find out more, so that you can do this. So it's only 5 people at a time then.
Yeah, if you get 3 people looking after 5 people, I mean, it's just people are so well looked after. I wanted it. My intention was that it's going to be transforming, a life transforming, journey for people, and probably
No pressure then.
60% of the time it does do that, and people are amazed that they don't feel hungry. That's the thing. When they go day 3, I don't feel hungry. It's like, no, you don't need to. It's okay. I wanted to say something earlier on. The difference between fasting and starvation is when you don't know when you're going to eat again, and it's very humbling at night when you're fasting, because you know that you're going to eat in whenever day's time, but half the population around the world don't know, and they go to bed with a rumbly tummy, or like a tummy that feels empty. So that humbles you when you really start to think of that it's not starving. We never starve around here. We just have addiction.
Yeah.
We've got a dopamine addiction. Our bodies expect food.
Yeah, absolutely. Claire, it's been a fascinating chat, and thank you for sharing your journey and all the different things you've done and how you brought them together. I think it's so wonderful.
Thank you.
Is there anything before we close? As a parting message for the listeners that you have?
Oh, just thanks for listening, and hopefully you've found it inspiring. And please get in touch if anybody wants to know more about what I do, or come on a retreat.
Brilliant. I invite you all to go and visit Claire and her place in Devon, and find out more about that and take part. Claire, thanks again for joining us,
you.
and I'm sure I'll be seeing you soon.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you.